The midnight knock. Okay, so you're not gonna believe what happened to me last month. Like, I'm still processing this whole thing. And honestly, every time I think about it, I get chills all over again. But let me start from the beginning, 'cause this story, it's wild. So, my brother Jake and I, we've always had this weird relationship, you know? Like, we love each other and all that, but we're not super close. He's 5 years older than me, and growing up, he was always the golden child. Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect life. And me? Well, I was just kinda doing my own thing, trying to figure stuff out. Anyway, Jake married this woman named Rebecca about 7 years ago. And look, I'm not gonna sit here and trash talk her or anything, but from day one, she never really liked me. I don't know what it was. Maybe she thought I was too chaotic, too messy, too whatever. She's one of those super controlling types, you know? Everything has to be just so. The kids have to eat organic. They can't watch certain TV shows. They have to be in bed by exactly 7:30 every single night. Like, zero flexibility. They've got 3 kids together. There's Emma, who's 9, Tyler, who's 7, and little Sophia, who just turned 5. And these kids, they're amazing. They're sweet and funny and curious, and honestly, I loved spending time with them whenever I got the chance. But here's the thing. About 6 months ago, I was at their house for Tyler's birthday party. It was this whole big production, right? Bouncy castle in the yard, fancy decorations, the works. And I was just hanging out with the kids, playing games, being silly, making them laugh. You know, normal uncle stuff. Well, apparently, Rebecca didn't like that. She pulled me aside later that evening, and I'll never forget the look on her face. She was like, stone cold serious, and she goes, I need to talk to you about boundaries. I was like, okay, what's up? And she literally said to me, I think you're getting too attached to my children, and they're getting too attached to you. I need you to take a step back. Stay away from my kids. I swear to God, my jaw just dropped. I was like, what? Are you serious right now? She went on this whole rant about how I was being inappropriate by wrestling with Tyler and how I was undermining her parenting by sneaking the kids extra cookies when she wasn't looking. Like, seriously? We're talking about cookies here. I tried to talk to Jake about it later, but he just kinda shrugged it off. He was like, you know how she is. Just give her some space and it'll blow over. But it didn't blow over. Rebecca made it super clear that I wasn't welcome around the kids anymore. She stopped inviting me to family stuff. When I'd call Jake to make plans, she'd be in the background making comments. It got to the point where I barely saw my own brother, let alone my nieces and nephew. And honestly, it hurt. Like it really hurt. These were kids I'd known since they were born. I'd been there for Emma's first steps, for Tyler's first day of school. And suddenly, I was just cut out of their lives because Rebecca decided I was some kind of bad influence. So I backed off. What else was I gonna do, right? I didn't want to cause more drama or make things worse for Jake. I figured maybe Rebecca would chill out eventually, and things would go back to normal. But then, about 3 weeks ago, something happened that changed everything. It was a Tuesday night, and I remember, 'cause I'd just gotten home from this brutal shift at work. I'm a bartender at this place downtown, and Tuesday nights are usually pretty chill, but this one had been crazy for some reason. I got home around 11:30, exhausted, just wanting to crash. I'd literally just gotten into my pajamas and was brushing my teeth when I heard it. This knock on my door. Now, I live in this little apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building, and nobody ever just shows up unannounced, especially not at almost midnight. My first thought was that maybe one of my buddies was drunk and needed a place to crash or something. But when I looked through the peephole, I froze, standing in the hallway, looking absolutely terrified. Were Emma, Tyler, and Sophia. I'm not even kidding. My 9-year-old niece, my 7-year-old nephew, and my 5-year-old niece were standing outside my door at midnight, in their pajamas, looking like they'd been crying. I yanked the door open so fast, I almost pulled it off the hinges. Emma, what the hell? What are you guys doing here? Emma just grabbed Sophia and started crying harder. Tyler was trying to be brave, but I could see his little chin trembling. And Sophia, poor Sophia, she was clutching this stuffed bunny she's had forever, and she looked absolutely exhausted. I immediately pulled them inside and locked the door behind them. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it was gonna burst out of my chest. I was like, okay, it's okay, you're safe. But I need you to tell me what happened. Where are your mom and dad? Emma wiped her nose on her sleeve and said, they were fighting, really bad. Mom was screaming and Dad was yelling back, and then she started throwing things. We got scared, so we snuck out. My stomach just dropped, like I felt physically sick. You guys walked here? By yourselves? In the dark? Tyler nodded. We took the bus. Emma remembered which one goes near your place, 'cause you showed us that one time. I couldn't even process this. These kids had taken a city bus by themselves, at night, to get away from whatever was happening at home. Emma had managed to get them all the way across town to my apartment. Part of me was impressed by how resourceful she'd been, but mostly, I was just terrified thinking about what could have happened to them. I got them all settled on my couch, grabbed some blankets, and tried to calm them down. Sophia wouldn't let go of me, so I just sat there with her in my lap, while Emma and Tyler huddled together under this big, fuzzy throw blanket I have. Okay, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, even though I was freaking out inside. First things first. Your parents are probably worried sick right now. I need to call them and let them know you're safe. Emma grabbed my arm. No, please don't. Mom's gonna be so mad. She's gonna punish us. Sweetie, they need to know where you are. They're probably going crazy right now. But the look on her face, man. She was genuinely scared. Not just scared of getting in trouble, but actually scared. And that's when I knew something was really, really wrong. I made a decision right then. I said, okay, how about this? I'm gonna send your dad a text message, just to let him know you're with me and you're safe. But I'm not gonna tell him to come get you right away. First, I want to hear the whole story. Deal? Emma thought about it for a second, then nodded. So I grabbed my phone and texted Jake. Hey, the kids are at my place. They're safe. We need to talk. Within like 10 seconds, my phone was ringing. It was Jake, obviously, and he was losing his mind. What? What do you mean they're at your place? How did they get there? Are they okay? We've been looking everywhere. We were about to call the P. I stepped into my bedroom so the kids wouldn't hear and said, Jake, they're fine. They're scared, but they're okay. They said you and Rebecca were fighting and they got scared, so they came here. There was this long pause, and then he said, really quietly, put Rebecca on. She wants to talk to them. No, I said. And honestly, I surprised myself. I'm usually a pretty go-with-the-flow kind of guy, but something in me just snapped. They came to me because they were scared. Whatever's going on in your house, it's bad enough that 3 kids felt like they had to run away in the middle of the night. So no, I'm not putting Rebecca on, and I'm not sending them back tonight. They're staying here. You can't just keep my kids! Jake's voice went up an octave. I'm not keeping them. I'm making sure they're safe. Tomorrow morning, we're all gonna sit down and talk about this like adults. But tonight, they need to sleep somewhere. They feel safe. And apparently, that's not your house. Right? No. I could hear Rebecca yelling in the background, but I couldn't make out what she was saying. Jake sighed and said, Fine, but we're coming over first thing in the morning. And Rebecca's pissed. Yeah, well, join the club, I said, and hung up. When I came back out to the living room, all 3 kids were staring at me with these big, worried eyes. I sat down and said, All right, your dad knows you're here. You're staying with me tonight, and tomorrow we're gonna figure everything out. But right now, I need you guys to tell me what's been going on. And I need you to be honest with me, okay? What they told me over the next hour literally made me want to cry. Apparently, things at home had been getting bad for months. Rebecca's controlling behavior had gotten way worse. The kids weren't allowed to have friends over anymore. They couldn't do any activities unless Rebecca specifically approved them. Emma said she'd wanted to join the school soccer team, but Rebecca said no because it would interfere with their family schedule. But the worst part, the fighting between Jake and Rebecca had gotten really intense. They'd fight about everything: money, the kids, where they should live, what they should eat, you name it. And it wasn't just arguing. Rebecca would throw things. She'd scream until she was red in the face. Jake would yell back. And sometimes he'd punch walls or slam doors so hard the whole house would shake. Tyler, this sweet 7-year-old kid, told me that he couldn't sleep most nights because he was worried about what would happen if his parents started fighting. Emma said she'd started keeping a backpack packed with clothes and snacks just in case they needed to leave quickly. And Sophia, God, Sophia just kept saying, I don't like it when Mommy's angry. She's angry all the time now. My heart was literally breaking listening to this. These poor kids had been living in this constant state of fear and anxiety, and nobody had noticed. Or maybe people had noticed, but nobody had done anything about it. I made them some hot chocolate, set them up in my bedroom with every pillow and blanket I owned, and told them they could watch whatever they wanted on my laptop until they fell asleep. I was gonna camp out on the couch, but Sophia wouldn't let me leave. She grabbed my hand and said, Uncle, can you stay? I'm scared. So I ended up sitting on the floor next to my bed, holding her hand, while all 3 of them finally relaxed enough to fall asleep. And sitting there in the dark, listening to these kids breathe, I made a decision. Whatever happened tomorrow, whatever Rebecca said or did, I wasn't gonna let these kids go back to that house until I knew things were gonna change. I didn't care if she hated me. I didn't care if Jake got mad. These kids deserved best. I must have dozed off at some point, because the next thing I knew, someone was pounding on my door so hard I thought it was gonna break. I checked my phone. 6:30 in the morning. I knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. Rebecca was standing there, and let me tell you, I have never seen someone look so furious in my entire life. Her face was red. Her hair was a mess, and she looked like she was about to breathe actual fire. I opened the door, but kept the chain lock on. "Morning," I said. "Where are my children?" she hissed. "They're sleeping. It's 6:30 in the morning, Rebecca. Maybe we should let them rest and talk about this later. You let me in right now, or I'm calling the cops. You kidnapped my kids." "I didn't kidnap anyone. They showed up here on their own because they were scared. And honestly, after what they told me last night, I'm starting to understand why." Her eyes went wide. "What did they tell you?" "Everything," I said. "About the fighting, about you throwing things, about them being so scared they can't sleep at night. Everything." For a second, just a second, I saw something in her face. Maybe it was shame, or guilt, or fear. But then it was gone, and she was back to being angry. "Those are lies. They're just kids. They exaggerate everything. Now let me in." "No." "Excuse me?" I said no. Not until Jake gets here, and not until we can all sit down and talk about this calmly. "The kids are safe. They're asleep, and they're staying that way until a reasonable hour. You can wait in the hallway, or you can come back later, but you're not coming in here right now." I closed the door. I probably shouldn't have done that. I know it just made things worse. But I was so angry, and I was running on like 2 hours of sleep, and I just couldn't deal with her at that moment. She kept pounding on the door and yelling, but eventually she must have given up because it got quiet. I checked on the kids. They were still asleep, thank God. And then I made myself the strongest coffee known to man because I knew it was going to be a long day. Around 8 o'clock, there was another knock. This time, it was Jake, and he looked awful. Like he hadn't slept at all, which he probably hadn't. I let him in, and the first thing he did was hug me, like a real tight hug. And he whispered, "Thank you for keeping them safe." I was not expecting that. We sat down at my tiny kitchen table, and he just put his head in his hands. "It's bad," he said. "It's really bad. I didn't realize how bad until last night when we couldn't find them. Rebecca was hysteric, and I was going crazy. And then when you texted, ... Jake, what the hell is going on? Those kids are traumatized. They're scared of their own home." He looked up at me, and I could see tears in his eyes. I know, okay? Things with Rebecca have been falling apart for over a year now. She's been dealing with some mental health stuff, anxiety and depression. But she refuses to get help. She won't go to therapy. She won't take medication. She just keeps saying she can handle it on her own. But she can't. And I've been trying to hold everything together. But I'm failing. I'm failing the kids. I'm failing her. I'm failing everyone. This was the most honest Jake had been with me in years. Maybe ever. "You're not failing anyone," I said. "But you gotta get help, man. This situation isn't sustainable. Those kids can't live like this." "I know. Last night, after you called, Rebecca and I had the biggest fight we've ever had. I told her we need to go to counseling, both couples counseling and individual therapy for her. She finally agreed. She's scared, I think. scared that she's losing her family. Is she outside? Yeah, she wants to see the kids. She calmed down a lot since this morning. She's sorry about everything. About how she treated you, about the fighting, about scaring the kids. She knows she messed up. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But I'd also heard Rebecca's side of things enough times to be skeptical. Jake, I'm gonna be real with you. I'm not sending those kids home unless I know things are actually gonna change. Not just promises, but actual, concrete changes. I'm moving us out, he said suddenly. Well, temporary. We're gonna go stay at Rebecca's parents' place for a while. They live out in the suburbs. Bigger house, quieter neighborhood. It'll give us some space to figure things out. And her parents can help with the kids, while Rebecca and I focus on getting help. And he paused. I want you to be involved. With the kids, I mean. Rebecca was wrong to cut you out. The kids love you, and they need you in their lives. Okay, I'll admit it. I got a little choked up hearing that. The kids woke up around 9, and there was this whole emotional reunion. Rebecca came in, and she actually apologized to them. Like got down on their level and told them she was sorry for scaring them. Sorry for the fighting. Sorry for making them feel unsafe. She cried. They cried. We all cried. It was a whole thing. She also apologized to me, which I wasn't expecting. She said she'd been dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety, and she'd taken it out on everyone around her, including me. She admitted that cutting me out of the kids' lives was wrong, and that she'd been unreasonably controlling. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it felt genuine. They didn't go home that day. Actually, they stayed at my apartment for 3 more days, while Jake and Rebecca packed up essentials and made arrangements to stay at her parents' place. The kids slept in my bed. I slept on the couch, and we just hung out. We watched movies, played games, ate way too much pizza, and slowly, I watched them start to relax again. Emma told me on the 3rd day that she felt like she could breathe again. That broke my heart and filled it at the same time. She also apologized to me, which I wasn't expecting. She said she'd been dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety, and she'd taken it out on everyone around her, including me. She admitted that cutting me out of the kids' lives was wrong, and that she'd been unreasonably controlling. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it felt genuine. They didn't go home that day. Actually, they stayed in my apartment for 3 more days, while Jake and Rebecca packed up essentials and made arrangements to stay at her parents' place. The kids slept in my bed. I slept on the couch, and we just hung out. We watched movies, played games, ate way too much pizza, and slowly, I watched them start to relax again. Emma told me on the 3rd day that she felt like she could breathe again. That broke my heart and filled it at the same time. Jake and Rebecca started therapy the following week, couples counseling twice a week, and Rebecca started seeing someone individually too. They also started family counseling with the kids, which I think was really important. And me, well, I'm back in the kids' lives. I see them every weekend now. Sometimes we do fun stuff. Sometimes we just hang out and do homework together. But the point is, I'm there. I'm present. And they know that if they ever need me, day or night, I'm just a phone call away. Things aren't perfect. Jake and Rebecca still have a lot of work to do, and there are still rough days. But the fighting has stopped, at least the explosive kind. They're learning how to communicate better, how to handle stress in healthier ways. And the kids, they're doing better. Emma joined that soccer team she wanted to be on. Tyler started taking art classes. Sophia's sleeping through the night again. That midnight knock on my door was probably the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. But it was also maybe the most important thing, because it forced everyone to confront what was really going on, to stop pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Rebecca actually thanked me a few weeks ago. She said that as much as she hated that night, as much as it terrified her to realize her kids had run away, it was the wake-up call she needed. She said she'd been in denial about how bad things had gotten, and seeing her children choose to risk their safety rather than stay in that environment made her realize she had to change. I don't know what would have happened if the kids hadn't shown up at my door. Maybe things would have gotten worse. Maybe someone would have gotten seriously hurt. Or maybe Jake and Rebecca would have figured it out on their own eventually. But I'm glad I was there. I'm glad they knew they could come to me. I'm glad I fought for them. Because at the end of the day, that's what family's supposed to do, right? Show up. Even when it's hard. Even when it's messy. Even when it's the middle of the night and 3 scared kids are standing at your door. You show up. And honestly, I'd do it again in a heartbeat. So yeah, that's how it all started. But trust me, the story doesn't end there. Not even close. Because what happened over the next few months, that's where things really got interesting. Let me back up a little bit and fill you in on some details I didn't mention before. See, after that first week, when the kids stayed with me and then moved to Rebecca's parents' house, I thought things would just kinda smooth out, you know? Like, okay, they're in therapy, they're working on their issues, everything's gonna be fine now. But life doesn't work like that. It's messier than that. About 2 weeks after they moved to Rebecca's parents' place, I got a call from Emma. She was whispering into the phone, and I could barely hear her. "Uncle, can you come get me? Please?" My heart just stopped. I was like, "Emma, what's wrong? Where are you?" "I'm at school. I told the nurse I felt sick, so I could call you. Mom and Dad had another fight this morning. And I can't go back there today. Can I please just come stay with you after school?" I didn't even hesitate. "Yes, absolutely. I'll be there at 3 to pick you up. Does your dad know you're calling me?" "No. Please don't tell him yet. I just need a break." So I called in sick to work, drove 45 minutes out to the suburbs, and picked Emma up from school. When she got in my car, she just looked exhausted, like bone-deep tired. And she's 9 years old. No kid should look like that. We went back to my place, and I made her favorite snack, peanut butter and apple slices. And we just sat on my couch for a while, in silence. Finally, she said, "It's not working." "What's not working, sweetheart?" "The therapy, the moving, all of it. They're still fighting. It's not as bad as before, but they're still doing it. And Grandma and Grandpa are nice, but their house is so quiet and tense all the time. Everyone's walking on eggshells. I hate it. I pulled her into a hug. I'm sorry. I know the adults promised things would get better. And I know it feels like they're not. But healing takes time. It's not gonna happen overnight. How much time? She asked, and her voice cracked. Because I'm tired of waiting for things to get better. I'm tired of being scared all the time. I'm tired of taking care of Tyler and Sophia when Mom and Dad are too busy fighting to notice we're scared. That last part hit me like a truck. Wait, you've been taking care of them? Emma, that's not your job. Well, somebody has to, she said, and she sounded so much older than 9. Sophia still has nightmares about that night we left. Tyler started wetting the bed again, and he's so embarrassed about it. And Mom's on all these new medications that make her sleepy, and Dad's working extra hours to pay for therapy. So somebody has to make sure we eat dinner and do our homework and get to bed on time. I felt sick. Here I was, thinking that moving to the grandparents' house and starting therapy had fixed everything, but I'd been so focused on Jake and Rebecca that I hadn't really checked in on what the kids were going through. Okay, I said. Here's what we're gonna do. First, I'm gonna call your dad and let him know you're with me, because he's probably freaking out right now. Then, you're gonna stay here tonight, and tomorrow, you and I are gonna go have a serious conversation with your parents about what you just told me. Because you're right. It's not your job to take care of your siblings. You're a kid, and you deserve to be a kid. She nodded, wiping her eyes. So I called Jake, and yeah, he was freaking out. The school had called to say Emma left with me, and he didn't know what was going on. I told him Emma needed a night away, and that we'd all talk tomorrow. He wasn't happy about it, but he agreed. That night, Emma and I stayed up late talking. She told me more about what life had been like over the past few months. How Rebecca's anxiety medication made her sleep a lot during the day, so she'd be up at weird hours at night, which meant the kids' schedule was all messed up. How Jake was constantly stressed about money because therapy was expensive, and they were still paying for their regular house even though they weren't living there. How the grandparents meant well, but they had all these rules and expectations that made everyone feel even more tense. But she also told me about some good things. How Tyler had started drawing these amazing pictures in his art class, and how he was actually really talented. How Sophia was learning to read and would make everyone sit and listen to her sound out words from her picture books. How on good days, when her parents weren't fighting, they'd all play board games together, and it felt almost normal. ... I just wish the good days happened more often, Emma said. The next day, I drove Emma back to her grandparents' house, and Jake, Rebecca, and I sat down for a serious talk, while the grandparents took the kids to the park. And I didn't hold back. I told them everything Emma had said, how she felt like she had to be the parent, how the kids were still struggling, how moving and therapy wasn't the magic solution everyone thought it would be. Rebecca started crying immediately. I'm failing them. I'm failing my own children. You're not failing them, I said. But you're not seeing them clearly right now either. You're so focused on fixing your marriage and dealing with your own mental health that the kids are kind of getting lost in the shuffle. Jake looked devastated. What do we do? I thought we were doing everything right. Therapy, medication, space from the old house. What else is there? I have an idea, I said. And hear me out before you say no. They both looked at me. What if the kids came and stayed with me for a while? Like a real while? Not just a sleepover, but maybe a month or two. You two could focus on intensive therapy without worrying about the day-to-day parenting stuff. The kids could have a stable, calm environment. And I'd bring them to visit you guys on weekends. It would give everyone some breathing room. Rebecca immediately shook her head. No, absolutely not. I'm not abandoning my children. You wouldn't be abandoning them, I said. You'd be making sure they're taken care of while you take care of yourself. Rebecca, you can't pour from an empty cup. And right now your cup is bone dry. The kids can feel that. Jake was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Would you really do that? Take all 3 of them for that long?" "In a heartbeat," I said. "Look, my apartment's small, but we'd make it work. I'd have to adjust my work schedule, but my boss is pretty understanding. And honestly, I think the kids need this. They need to feel like kids again, not like little adults managing a crisis." Rebecca was crying harder now. "I'm their mother. I should be able to take care of them." "And you will," I said gently. "But right now, the best way you can take care of them is by taking care of yourself first. Get healthy, really healthy, not just going through the motions. And then you'll be the mom they need." It took another week of discussions, including bringing the kids' therapist into the conversation. But eventually, Jake and Rebecca agreed. The kids would come stay with me for 2 months. Jake and Rebecca would do intensive couples therapy 3 times a week. And Rebecca would continue her individual therapy. The kids would see them every weekend. And we'd all reassess after 2 months. I'm not gonna lie. Those first few days after the kids moved in were chaotic. My apartment is like 800 square feet. I gave the kids my bedroom, and I slept on this air mattress in the living room that would deflate halfway through the night. So I'd wake up basically on the floor. We had to establish a whole new routine: who showers when, how to share the tiny bathroom, where everyone's stuff goes. But you know what? It was also kind of amazing. Without the constant tension of their parents' relationship hanging over them, the kids started to blossom. Tyler, who'd been so quiet and anxious, started talking more. He'd tell me about his day at school, about his friends, about this girl in his class who he thought was funny. He'd show me his drawings, and man, this kid had talent. He drew these incredibly detailed pictures of superheroes and dragons and space battles. Sophia, who'd been clinging to everyone and having nightmares, started sleeping through the night again after about a week. She'd wake up in the morning and come bounce on my air mattress to wake me up, and we'd make pancakes together before school. She started singing again, too. These little made-up songs about her stuffed animals and her day. And Emma, sweet Emma, who'd been carrying the weight of the world on her tiny shoulders, finally started acting like a 9-year-old again. She joined a reading club at school. She had friends over for sleepovers. She laughed more. Like genuine belly laugh laughter that I hadn't heard from her in forever. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. There were hard moments too. Like the time Tyler had a complete meltdown because he forgot his homework at his grandparents' house and was convinced his teacher would hate him forever. Or when Sophia woke up screaming from a nightmare about her parents fighting, and it took 2 hours to calm her down. Or when Emma got her first bad grade on a test and was absolutely convinced it meant she was stupid and would never amount to anything. But we worked through it. We talked about feelings. We established routines that made everyone feel safe. We had family meetings where everyone got to say what was on their mind without judgment. And slowly, week by week, I watched these kids heal. The weekend visits with Jake and Rebecca were interesting. At first, the kids would be really anxious beforehand. Emma would get quiet. Tyler would get clingy. Sophia would start acting out. But then they'd come back on Sunday evenings and tell me about what they did. How Mom made them cookies, how Dad took them to the park, how everyone played games and nobody fought. Rebecca was doing better. You could see it. She'd found a medication that worked for her without making her so drowsy. She was doing therapy 4 times a week now. Individual, couples, and even a support group for parents with anxiety. She was learning coping mechanisms, learning how to manage her stress without taking it out on everyone around her. Jake looked less exhausted too. He'd negotiated with his boss to work from home a few days a week so he could be more present in therapy. He and Rebecca were actually communicating, like really communicating, maybe for the first time in their marriage. About 6 weeks into the kids staying with me, we had what I call the breakthrough weekend. Jake and Rebecca had rented this little cabin by a lake for the weekend, and they invited me and the kids to come along. At first I was like, "Are you sure? This is family time. I don't want to intrude." But Jake insisted. He said, "You are family. You've done more for our kids in the past 2 months than we've done in the past 2 years. We want you there." So we all went to this cabin, and it was honestly one of the best weekends of my life. We went fishing. Well, we attempted to fish. Tyler was the only one who caught anything, and it was this tiny little fish that we threw back. But he was so proud of himself. We roasted marshmallows and told ghost stories. We played board games that got ridiculously competitive. Rebecca taught Sophia how to braid hair. Jake and I took the kids on a hike, and Emma found this cool rock that she was convinced was a geode. But the best moment was Saturday night. The kids had gone to bed in the cabin's loft, and the 3 of us adults were sitting by the fire. Rebecca looked at me and said, "Thank you." "For what?" I asked. "For saving our family," she said, and she started crying again. "I know I was horrible to you. I blamed you for things that weren't your fault. I pushed you away when you were just trying to love our kids. And when everything fell apart, you were the one who stepped up. You took care of my children when I couldn't. You gave us the space we needed to heal. I don't know how to ever repay that." I didn't know what to say. I just shrugged and said, "They're my family too." Jake put his hand on my shoulder. "We want you to be their godfather, officially. If anything ever happens to us, we want to know they'd be with someone who loves them as much as you do." I'm not ashamed to admit I cried. Like full-on ugly crying by the campfire. The 2 months turned into 3 because Jake and Rebecca's therapist suggested a gradual transition back. So the kids started staying with me 5 days a week, then 4, then 3. Eventually, we worked down to a schedule where they stayed with their parents during the week and with me every other weekend. Jake and Rebecca moved back into their house, but not before making some big changes. They turned one room into what they called the calm down room. A space with soft lighting, comfortable cushions, and noise-canceling headphones where anyone in the family could go when they felt overwhelmed. They established house rules about fighting. No yelling, no throwing things, and if things got heated, they'd take a break and come back to the conversation later. They also made a rule that the kids' bedtime routine was sacred. No matter what was going on between them, from 7 to 8 o'clock every night was family time. Reading, talking about the day, tucking everyone in. No exception. And it worked. Not perfectly, because life's never perfect. But it worked. Emma thrived. She made the honor roll at school. She became captain of her soccer team. She started writing these amazing short stories and even won a school writing contest. She told me once, "I'm not scared to go home anymore. I'm not scared at all." Tyler came out of his shell completely. Turns out, this kid is hilarious. Like, genuinely funny. He started doing these little comedy sketches for the family, and we'd all crack up. He also got really into his art and started taking private lessons. His teacher said he had real potential. Sophia, my sweet little Sophia, is doing great. She's confident, happy, and thriving in school. She's made a best friend, another little girl named Maya, and they're inseparable. She doesn't have nightmares anymore. She still loves her stuffed bunny, but now she sleeps through the night holding it peacefully, not clutching it in fear. Jake and Rebecca's marriage isn't perfect, but it's healthy. They still see their therapist once a month for maintenance. They've learned how to disagree without destroying each other. They've learned how to be partners instead of adversaries. They've learned how to put their kids first. And Rebecca and I, we're actually friends now. Real friends. She apologized. I mean, really apologized for how she treated me. We talked through all of it. Her insecurities, her anxiety, her fear that she wasn't a good enough mother. She explained that she'd seen how good I was with the kids and felt threatened, like I was showing her up. She'd been dealing with postpartum depression after Sophia that had never been properly treated, and it had spiraled into generalized anxiety disorder. She'd been drowning and didn't know how to ask for help. I told her I understood, and I forgave her. Because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, for those kids to be happy and healthy and safe. Now, I see the kids all the time. I'm at every soccer game, every art show, every school event. I'm the fun uncle who lets them stay up late and eat too much ice cream. But I'm also the uncle who helps with homework and gives advice and shows up when things get hard. Last month, we all went on a vacation together. Me, Jake, Rebecca, and the kids. We went to this beach resort, and it was incredible. We built sandcastles, went boogie boarding, played mini golf, ate way too much seafood. One night, we were all sitting on the beach, watching the sunset, and Sophia climbed into my lap and said, "This is the best family ever." And you know what? She was right. Looking back on that night, when the kids showed up at my door, I realize it was a gift. A terrifying, heart-stopping gift, but a gift nonetheless. It forced all of us to confront the truth. It forced Jake and Rebecca to get the help they needed. It forced me to step up and be more involved. It forced all of us to reevaluate what family means and what really matters. The kids are okay now. More than okay. They're thriving. And I get to be part of their lives in a real way, meaningful way. I get to watch them grow up. I get to be there for the big moments and the small moments. I get to be their uncle, their godfather, their safe place. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't been home that night, or if I'd turned them away, or if I'd sent them straight back without listening to what they had to say. The thought makes me feel sick, because I know things could have gotten so much worse. But I was home. I did listen, and I fought for them. Jake told me recently that their therapist said something that stuck with him. She said, every family has a crisis point, a moment when things could either completely fall apart or become the catalyst for real change. Most families don't recover from that crisis because they don't have someone willing to step in and hold things together until they can heal. You had that person, and it saved your family. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back or anything. Honestly, I just did what anyone would do, or at least what anyone should do. I showed up. I listened. I cared. I didn't give up on them even when things got really hard. And the kids, they taught me so much about resilience, about courage, about how strong kids can be when the adults in their lives let them down, and how beautifully they can bloom when those same adults get their act together. Emma told me last week that she wants to be a therapist when she grows up, so she can help other families like hers. Tyler said he wants to be an artist and make things that make people happy. Sophia said she wants to be a teacher, or maybe a veterinarian, or possibly a princess. She's still working out the details. The point is, they're dreaming again. They're planning for the future. They're not just surviving anymore. They're living. And that's what this whole crazy story is really about. It's not just about one dramatic night when 3 scared kids showed up at their uncle's door. It's about what came after. The hard work, the healing, the rebuilding, the decision to not give up, even when it would have been easier to just let things fall apart. It's about choosing to show up day after day, even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient or scary. It's about loving people enough to tell them the truth, even when the truth hurts. It's about giving people the space and support they need to heal, even when you don't know if they'll actually take advantage of it. And most importantly, it's about putting kids first. Not just saying you're putting them first, but actually doing it. Making the hard choices. Having the difficult conversations. Getting the help that's needed, even when it's expensive or time-consuming or humbling. I'm not gonna pretend I'm some kind of hero. I'm just a guy who tends bar and lives in a tiny apartment and drives a car that makes weird noises. But I love those kids with my whole heart, and I'd do anything for them. And when they needed me most, I was there. That's what family does. So yeah, that's my story. The story of how my brother's wife told me to stay away from her kids, and how those kids ended up staying with me for 3 months while their parents put their lives back together. The story of how one scary night tuned into the catalyst for real, lasting change. It's about giving people the space and support they need to heal. even when you don't know if they'll actually take advantage of it. And most importantly, it's about putting kids first. Not just saying you're putting them first, but actually doing it. Making the hard choices. Having the difficult conversations. Getting the help that's needed, even when it's expensive or time-consuming or humbling. I'm not going to pretend I'm some kind of hero. I'm just a guy who tends bar and lives in a tiny apartment and drives a car that makes weird noises. But I love those kids with my whole heart, and I'd do anything for them. And when they needed me most, I was there. That's what family does. So yeah, that's my story. The story of how my brother's wife told me to stay away from her kids. And how those kids ended up staying with me for 3 months while their parents put their lives back together. The story of how one scary night turned into the catalyst for real, lasting change. The kids still talk about that night, sometimes. Themma calls it the night everything changed. Tyler calls it the night we ran away to Uncle's house. Sophia just calls it the scary night that got better. And me? I call it the night I learned what it really means to be family. So hey, if you made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. I know it was long and probably all over the place, but it's the truth. Every word of it. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think or feel something, I'd really appreciate it if you could follow our page. We've got tons more stories like this. Real stories about real people going through real stuff. Hit that like button, leave a comment letting me know what you thought, or share this with someone who might need to hear it. And stick around, because we've got more stories coming your way soon. Stories about life, about family, about those moments that change everything. Stories that remind us we're all just doing our best, and that's okay. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember, always, always show up for the people you love. Until next time, this is your friend, signing off. Peace.